Welcome back to the Hard AF podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea VanBuskirk. I'm a wife, mom of 3, and recovering mother hustler on a mission to help millennial moms break free from burnout and reconnect to their feminine power. This show is about healing, spiritual growth, boundaries, and creating a life filled with more joy, ease, and freedom. On today's show, I'm talking about how innocent questions can sometimes bring up painful memories of our past, but how from a healed space, it can actually be empowering to see how far we've come, how everything we have been through has made us into the person we are today, how each experience helps us grow and evolve so that we are able to make better choices for ourselves and our future. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome back. Hope you guys are doing well. Have you guys ever, felt like maybe you needed to hide certain things about yourself, or maybe there are certain things that you don't really talk a lot about because maybe the truth is painful, or, people ask questions and it can trigger us, right? So let's say you have some painful piece of your past. Most of us do. And, you meet someone, you're having a conversation, someone asks you an innocent question, and it might bring up that painful moment. And what I'm getting at is, this has happened to me recently. And it's something that I think I forget about because, sometimes your past, you just kind of pretend like it doesn't exist in a lot of ways because it just feels like an unnecessary piece that needs to be shared, right? But there's kind of a flip side to this too. So over Thanksgiving break, we spent some time with some family friends, and some of these family friends don't know us very well or don't know me or my history and everything. And I think it's a very normal, innocent question when you're around families over the holidays. Somebody might ask you about your family. And so the questions were, brought up like, what's your family doing for the holidays? And I have to be like, oh, they're dead, like I know I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable. And sometimes I feel like Phoebe in Friends because, she always has this such a traumatic backstory, right? But she just says it in such a happy way because she's just a happy person. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like that because people ask questions and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to answer them. And it's kind of heavy, right? And for those of you that are new here to the show and don't know much about my past, my dad was injured when I was 9 months old and he became a quadriplegic. And my mom didn't handle that very well. And so she developed an addiction, mostly to, pain pills and other kinds of psychotic drugs. So she was just very much went down the road of addiction with pharmaceuticals. So I had a pretty traumatic, young childhood when I was living with her because she eventually had left my dad when I was younger. And then, so when my mom had custody of me, it was very bad. It was horrible. I had one half brother that I lived with her for a time being. And then it got so bad. And eventually both of our dads got custody of us. My half brother was adopted by his stepmom later. And then my mom went on to have 3 other kids with another man and just pretty much was an addict for the rest of her life. And she passed away when I was 22. And my dad and me were very close, and I took care of him in a lot of ways. Our lives were very much enmeshed, maybe in some unhealthy ways too, for sure. But, I did spend a lot of my life taking care of him, and he died when I was 33, and I'm 38 now. So both my parents are passed, and, it's kind of had a little bit of a traumatic backstory. And obviously my dad was, a quadriplegic, which was a whole other situation to grow up with and deal with, growing up with a parent with a disability and taking care of your parents. And I'm sure many of you guys can relate in one way or the other, taking care of a parent who had a disability or growing up with a parent who's an addict and having to take care of an addict parent, because that happens too, right? We as young children have to learn to be the responsible caretakers in our homes and can see a lot of crazy stuff growing up, like having to be an adult from an early age, right? Doing adult things from an early age. So that was me. That's a little bit about my backstory. So then, coming into places where people ask about your family and you have to be like, oh yeah, they're gone. So it's interesting, but I got to have a conversation. Luckily, usually the things with my mom, that's short-lived. It's a pretty cut and dry, she was an addict, died when I was young 20s. So I don't have to go too much about my traumatic experiences with her growing up, but I do talk a lot about my dad usually because he was my main primary parent growing up. along with my grandma, which was his mom. So, I think it's always kind of like that shock factor a little bit, when people ask and they're like, oh, shoot, like foot and mouth, I just asked a question that maybe I shouldn't have asked, kind of a thing. But it was nice to talk about my dad. I'll say that. So what I was getting at is, sometimes I feel like we may shy away from sharing parts of our past with people. But sometimes situations arise where we get asked a question where we might have to answer and give an answer that gives somebody a piece of our past. And I want to let you know that's okay. Because whether we do it with a smile and kind of laugh it off like it's not that big of a deal, like Phoebe and friends or myself, or if it makes us tear up a little bit to think about it or to talk about it all, that either way, it's okay. And you shouldn't be ashamed of your past because we all have one. We all have experiences. Even if we have both parents that are alive and well and maybe in our lives, it doesn't mean that they were great parents. There could be some toxic relationships we've had to deal with, or there was still things that we were traumatized in our childhood. Most of us have gone through stuff and sometimes we don't like to talk about that or let people know kind of the depths that we've come from, so to speak, because it's hard. Sometimes we don't want to admit or look back at some of the things we had to face in our younger years. But the thing is, that's okay because you're here now. And that's the beauty of life, is that everything we've gone through has brought us to this exact moment right here, has brought us these lessons, has brought us these experiences to make us into who we are today. And so I think why I felt to do this episode specifically on this is to, remind you that if you do have kind of this past that's filled with traumatic experiences or painful events, or you are a younger adult that does not have either of your parents here, because I know I'm not the only one in this boat. I have friends in my circle that are also in this boat. And it's hard because you're like, man, I feel like I'm too young to have both of my parents no longer here in the physical space. But it happens. It happens. And, we deal with it. Like, even in my own family, my closest cousins were the closest in age, and our parents were very close. They were brother and sister. They also have lost both their parents. Their father was an addict, and their mother, my aunt, died of cancer. And so they also have had those experiences of caretaking of your parent and dealing with a parent who's an addict. And those are very challenging things. And so just knowing that even in my own family, there's 3 of us in this group, I know there's a whole lot of us out there in the world too. So first off, if that's you, if you're in that camp where both of your parents are deceased, I'm very sorry. I know that can feel very lonely. There's this sense of feeling like an orphan in a lot of ways, where you feel like I don't have anybody here, right? Like, there's just, no matter if you've got a lot of people surrounding you, there's still that feeling of loneliness in a sense, right? Because not having your parents, there's some kind of a feeling attached with that. So let me just say, I'm with you. I get that. And you're okay. You're okay. And yeah, it's hard. It's sad, but it's also made us to who we are. Right? It's part of our story. And so that's kind of where I'm going with, is to let go of any shame that we carry with our past or our story, because it's ours. And no matter how broken we feel, we're actually still whole. And that's the beauty of it, is that we are whole. We have this divine purpose, if you will. We had these soul contracts with these people in our life to give us these life experiences and these life lessons for our soul growth, for our evolvement, and to make us into the people we are today. And, I think I speak to a lot of parents because I'm a parent and my podcast is geared to mothers. And so as a parent who's grown up with a past, like, all these lessons we've learned, it just helps us be a better parent to our kids, right? Like, our kids choose us, like, as souls, they chose us to be their parents in this life. And so our soul involvement through our lifetime helps them on their soul path too, right? Like, it's this beautiful tapestry that's woven with, the way everything comes together. And so, yes, things will come up. People will ask questions, and you might have to answer and give some context to your past. And even if it, like I said, even if it makes you tear up, makes you cry, makes you think, maybe brings things up that you kind of had forgotten about, right? That you would kind of put away in a box because you didn't want to look at it. And it might have you look at that, stuff inside that box for a minute. But it's okay. And to, sometimes when we kind of go on our healing journey and we kind of don't look at something for a while, and then it comes up because we've done some healing, that when we look at it later in this more healed state, it gives us a greater sense of appreciation, and it gives us a wider perspective on some of the things that we've gone through in our lives, and that we're able to see some of these things we've gone through with more appreciation and gratitude because of what it's given us for who we are today. And that's a beautiful place to be. And I think, depending on where you are at in your healing journey, that would be the goal, right? The goal would be to get to the point where you can know that some shitty things happen in your life, but know that that doesn't mean you're broken. Remember that you were still whole, and to look back on some of those painful events of your life with like a gratitude of like what it taught you and how it evolved your soul and how it led to some maybe strengths in your parenting and how you are able to be a better parent to your kids than what you had as a child, right? Like being able to see things from that higher perspective, I think, is the goal. And just to like almost fill those voids or those holes within us with love, healing those holes with love and appreciation and gratitude, to just loving who we are now, right? Loving the choices that we now know we are able to make for ourselves, because sometimes we look back and think we couldn't see all the choices we had, or we didn't know then what we know now. So it's being able to kind of look back more with this healed perspective of being able to see the good that's come from some of the pain that we've gone through, right? So I really wanted to use this as just a simple reminder that your story is yours. The pain that we've gone through, the scars that we wear, as we age, they are in a way a badge of honor, a badge of living, right? We've been living life and we are continuing to live. I think sometimes, there's people out there that dwell on the pain of the past and they can't move forward. And that's really sad. So if anything, I think when we have these little reminders of things that we've come from, is to really give ourselves kind of a pat on the back and to look back with this pride of how we've kept going. I know I've heard so many times when I've shared more intimate details of my story and growing up, and, I hear it all the time. People will be like, dang, I don't know how you aren't an addict or somebody living on the streets. How did you make it out? So again, like there's so many people that make those choices where they aren't able to pull themselves out. They can't get over it, so to speak, or they aren't able to see that there's more to life than what has happened to them, right? And so if you are a person who is still showing up every day for your kids, who's still putting one foot in front of the other, trying to make, create a better life for yourself, like you're doing it, you're living it. And so there is this sense of pride I think you should have for yourself, and like not holding on to any shame about your story or choices you made at certain points in your life because that was the best choice at that time, right? Because a lot of times we make choices based on what we know at that moment. And so as we grow, as we learn, as we evolve, as we heal, we learn, we know more, so then we can make better choices for our future. And so I invite you, if you haven't before, is maybe even taking some time to write your story for you, writing where you've come from, like remembering the things that you've overcome in your life, just as a reminder to show you that there were times in your life where you felt so broken that you would never get through. And guess what? You're still fucking here today. You've made it. So that was something that sparked that I was inspired to kind of speak on, just going through that, because I'm like, yeah, sometimes I forget how far I've come. Like I look back when I was in the throes of grief, those months after losing my dad, like how hard that was for me. And, having somebody remind me of my dad and our relationship and me getting to speak on how amazing of a man he was, because he was fucking amazing and he was a great role model and inspiration in a lot of things that he did with his life. Like it gave me a chance to speak on that. And it's something that I feel like I hadn't spoken on in a while because it was painful. And so sometimes I feel like we need these little reminders. And yeah, like I said, it might be a little triggering, it might be painful, but sometimes it's a good thing. It's a good thing to remember. And again, see how far we've come, or to remember those good moments and the things that it taught us. And so for me, I felt like getting to speak about me and my dad's relationship just had me remember him and keep his memory alive, and to bring back some of those amazing times we shared together, right? Like I was able to speak on his legacy that he's left, and that was pretty cool. So I think that's awesome if we can look back at some of these painful things of our past, or looking back and just using that as a way to feel proud and accomplished and see how far we've come, and to look through the past with healed eyes with that gratitude and appreciation, because it's beautiful, right? It really is. It's beautiful when we can overcome things. And, we as humans can do hard things, and we need to share the ways we've overcome things and to be proud. And I think in sharing how we've overcome things helps those people that are still in the midst of their hardships or still digging themselves out, still going through those hard times. It helps give them hope and inspiration to see that there is another side. There is, this like over the hill period where you can make it, make it to the top and make it over those challenges that you face. Another thing that came up recently too was I saw my sister for the first time in a long time. So I have 2 half sisters and a half brother, and some of those relationships are strained. Like, they lived with my mother for they're a lot younger than me, and they grew up with my mother as an addict for a good part of their life until she did pass away. And after her passing, there was a little bit of a disconnect with, as far as like, my relationship with my siblings. It was harder to stay in touch. And so anyway, I have a half sister that lives in Texas, and I was going to be doing a girls trip, and our girls trip was in the same town that my sister lived in. And so I had reached out to her, and we were able to connect, and I was able to see her and meet her kids for the first time. And I'm going to cry because it was so amazing, because it's one of those things that we're not super close, but we can still like catch up, and we have tried to make more of an attention to catch up and everything. But again, it's one of these things where staying in contact with her was very painful for me for a long time, because I was the oldest. And for me, I felt like I failed them, because when they were growing up and living with my mom and seeing the things that my mom was putting those kids through, and they would call me, and I wanted so bad to just be able to rescue them and, get custody of them or something. But at the time, that wasn't in my control or in my power to do. And so, of course, you hold on to that guilt a little bit, like feeling like I wish I could have saved them. I wish I could have taken them. But at the same time, I'm so fucking proud of all of my siblings. I have one that's still really young, who's only 2 years older than my oldest daughter. And I don't have really any contact with him at this point, which is also kind of sad. But anyway, that visit with my sister was really special. And instead of dwelling on like that shame and guilt of the past, it was just beautiful to be able to meet her family, meet her kids for the first time, and just work on that relationship. And so that was another thing I wanted to bring up too, is like, I can understand having some shame and guilt of things of the past, or it's like you don't want to call attention to those things because you don't want to put yourself in that spot where you're feeling like that pain, whether it is for shame or sadness or whatever it is, And I feel like that's part of it. Is I didn't want to have to think of like how much guilt I felt for not making a better like effort to stay in touch and in contact with my half siblings, and that it was almost intentional to not be as close, because I didn't want to be reminded of the pain my mother left behind, right? But at the same time, now, time has passed. I've healed a lot of these wounds and trauma things I've dealt with that relationship with my mother, and the things that, I dealt with that. Like, I feel like I've come a long way since then. So having this opportunity to see my sister and see her family, it was so special. And I'm so freaking proud of her and the wife and the mother she has become, and seeing how great of a mother she is and how doting she is on her kids. And like, she's one of those that's hyper aware and like wants to do everything perfectly and is so afraid. And I'm just like, it's so beautiful, because you just know that she cares and loves her kids so much. And so again, it's kind of taking this higher perspective, is, she saw what it was like to not have a mom that cared about those kinds of things. And anyway, so no matter if you carry shame or guilt or pain from your past, just know that it's okay, and that the goal is to get to a healed space where you can look back and be okay, right? You can be okay. You can look on your past with that love lens, right? With that healed lens, that loved lens, letting go of any shame or fear around any of it, and knowing that every experience you've gone through has made you who you are today. And who you are today is a beautiful thing. And so, so that's what I want to leave you with, sharing those few little stories that recently came up for me, how that stirred up some emotion, some pain, some shame, and some guilt. But it also showed me that higher perspective and that appreciation and gratitude for everything to get to where I am now. And, now I can make different choices and I can make more of an intention and an effort to stay connected with my half siblings. I can maybe make more of an effort to tell more stories about my father's story and keeping that, memory and legacy alive too. And then also just showing some gratitude for myself and how far I've come. And that's what I want for you too. So this message is to leave you with letting go of that shame and the guilt of anything on your past, knowing that no matter how broken you have felt, or maybe you still feel, that you can let that go because you're still whole, because you are still here. You're making it, and you can look back with a sense of pride that you've made it this far and look at all the things that you've come to learn and know and grow from the things you've been through and how it makes you the person you are today, and loving who you are today in spite of the choices that you made in the past. Because again, like I said, once you know more, once you learn more, then you make better choices from that new place of knowing. So hold that with you. And if there's any stories you want to share with me, I'd be happy to hear them and support you with that. If there's a memory or something that you want to share, maybe about the legacy of one of your loved ones or something, that you would like to share, I'd love to hear that. And I just hope you hold this hope out for that place of feeling healed and being able to see things from that perspective of love and gratitude and appreciation, again, for anything you've gone through that has made you who you are today, and to be proud of who you are today, because I'm proud of you. You're making it, you're doing it, you're still living life no matter what you've faced in your past. So I have so much love for you guys. I will see you next week. Peace. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today on the Hard AF podcast. Please share this episode with anyone you can think of that may need a little hope and encouragement right now. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave me a rating and review. Not only does it mean the world to me, but it also helps others find the show. Plus, at the end of every month, I do a drawing with anyone who has left me a review that previous month to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Just a little way for me to say thank you. So make sure you screenshot yours and send it to me on Instagram at chelsea.vanbuskirk or email me at info@chelseavanbuskirk.com. I love connecting with my listeners, so please feel free to message me in the DMs or an email, any questions or feedback you may have. If you tag me in your social posts or stories, anything about the podcast sharing, any of that, I will give you a shout out and repost on mine. I can't wait to be back with you next week. So until then, keep choosing love, keep choosing hope, and let's live hard as fuck.